All right, another day, another few hours. As you can tell, I've lowered this down. I am getting ready to see about trying to figure a way to put the mount here and for the motor, and go ahead and start figuring that part out. That way I can finalize and start tacking this thing together. For my motor, I am going to use this motor here, which is on my pressure washer that I built a few months back. This is a 13 horsepower motor. You can pick it up at the freight place that's close to the water. Probably hang it somewhere in here, and then I've got a metal plate that I'm going to use, actually a metal frame part from old lawnmower that I think is going to work great. Then I'm going to figure out how to mount. The shaft's going to hang off here, and then that way I can figure out where it's going to make contact with that shaft, figure out where that one's going to be cut. What I want to show you now is when you're building something without plans, every change you make will affect something else as a rule of thumb. I did not quite keep track of this, and I created an issue, so now I have to deal with it. Let's see if you can catch it. See if I can show it to you. It's a little difficult. All right, so you see the drive pulley here, right? The belt's supposed to come from there up to here. Well, that's a pretty good range. That's not the big deal. The big deal is that bar right there. You see that bar? Let's see if I can show it to you this way. There you go. So now you can see how the belt would run into this. So I've created a problem because originally it was going to sit up here. Then I realized I didn't have a deep enough cutting depth. So I dropped it on the bottom, and when I did that, that put this way below here. So the solution is going to be a little bit more ordering, but I'm going to do a one-to-one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to order another one of these with the smaller shaft, probably a little 1-inch shaft, and mount it directly above. So if it's the same size, it means these two will turn identical, and then the belt will only come straight across. So what that'll do is that'll allow me to keep the motor somewhat in the center to kind of balance the weight. And then I'll have to put a plate here with the little shaft, a couple of little small pillow blocks here to hang this. So that should get me where I need to be, but as you can see, every time you make a change, something else has to be addressed, and I did not quite look at that when I was going forward. So not a big deal, slight change. What it's going to give me, though, I think it's actually going to work a little better, is because I will be able to, I'll put a plate here that moves up and down a little bit to where I'll be able to put some torque down and raise this to be able to tighten this belt here. But then this is going to give me a straight shot, and what I want to do is I want to be able to put a pulley in here, a tensioner, to be able to tension the belt to actually engage the drive or loosen the belt so that it just spins. So it actually gives me a little bit of play here to be able to do that, because it was going to be a little more challenging, I think, trying to put it down here. So that's kind of the plan now, I think. All right, so a little something that you should really think about before you start building. Know which direction the shaft turns. So mine turns counterclockwise, and my initial plan was to take it and actually be facing the opposite direction so that the drive would come over here and would spin this one, which is fine and dandy because obviously I got my adjustment on this side. The issue turns into, and I got to figure out how to do this. As you can see, all the controls are on this side. So thinking this through, trying to decide what do I do, the thought came up, well, what if we turn this side and the drive side? Obviously, the biggest question I have is, this is going to slide. How far it's going to slide to tension the belt is an unknown. I can mount this drive. Obviously, this is going to come over to here. I have a double pulley that's going to go on there. And then I could put it on here. And then obviously, it's all going to line up to where this comes to here, and that can just drop down to there. Everything worked fine. The question is, do I want to go through that much trouble? Because once you tension basically every time you change the belt out, you're going to have to retension this, then readjust this. So every time you change a belt, you have to loosen this drive belt off. Do I really want to do that? All right, so after a lot of arguing with myself, I've decided just to bite the bullet. We're going to flip this thing around. So what we're going to do, having to do, is I'm going to make this the drive side, but I'm going to move this. So that means I have to cut these two pieces here off. Obviously do the same thing over here. And then I'm going to have to cut that plate off and grind it smooth so that the slider will go over here. Luckily, the distance is all the same, so it shouldn't be a big deal other than whacking it off and putting those, welding those back on. So not the most optimum thing to do, but I think that in the end of the day, this is going to be the best option. I should have done this in the first place. Yeah, so live and learn. All right, so that took about an hour to flip these two sides around and then weld everything back up. And so now I'm working on, well, let me go back. So what I did was I went back and squared this off to the frame and then used the distance from the square that I had there and then squared these off. And then I took a straight edge piece of square tubing I have and I stuck it face to face across these two, and it is almost dead on. So went ahead and kind of see there that I did mark all of those. I went ahead and set one of the set screws just to hold it into place, and then went ahead and kind of locked these down so that this thing's done. So now I'm on to this assembly. Yeah, I've got a lot of clamps floating around. All right, so what I'm doing is, obviously this is not set yet, but I'm trying to get an idea of, you know, face to face where this will sit, hits here, and then obviously then, so we got the face done first, then this to here, and then you go from here to the, you can hardly see it, but there. Today's gonna be an exciting day. As you can see, I have got the belts. I was able to go and find the belts that fit on here. It's a bit of a more of an event because the companies that sell these things, they don't normally just sell them to put on here. So when you go in there and tell them what size this is, they have a hard time figuring out actually what diameter or length or wherever they do the belts, what size needs to go. So we, luckily the place I went to had one of these pulleys, and so we were able to kind of trial and error until we found one that fit on there really well. Other thing is, you're going to have unknowns because we don't, you don't know how far this belt is. So when you go to get the belt, what they're going to ask you for is they're going to ask you for the size of these two pulleys here, and they're going to ask you for the center to center dimension from the center of this shaft to the center of that one. Once you give them that, then they're going to give you the distance, the size for that actual belt. So I got that one, and then obviously I've got the one that goes here. So the cool thing is, now that I have this, now I'll be able to sit here and align. Like I said before, I've already got these two aligned together. So I need to go ahead and align these two here. Go ahead and tap that in. Get this one basically permanently mounted. Then I can line it up with this one, make sure these are flush. That'll give me the ability to adjust this a little bit, and then I go ahead and figure out where this is going to sit, and then go ahead and figure my tension on that, and then go ahead and square that up with this one. So one step after the other. The other thing you'll notice on here is I got just an idle pulley here. Again, I'm using parts from what I have. This is from a lawnmower that I had, mower deck parts. When there's no tension on this thing, I don't want it to spin. Well, what's going to happen is obviously it's going to pop off. So I've put this long bolt here just to keep it from popping off there, and then this pulley is going to ride probably somewhere in there, just so that it keeps enough curve around here so that it'll spin but not come out of that. Obviously I'm going to have to play around with this. All right, so something I just learned here. Again, this is a learning process. So these are the 1-inch pillow blocks I got for the double shaft on top here. And you're going to notice it has the set ring, it has these little retainer rings, right? And they just kind of sit on there. And I was like, well, that's great and all, but you know, once you tighten this on there, what keeps it on there? What I figured out was they go opposite directions. So you put them facing out from each other, and then that keeps the shaft in position. What I did a while ago is I had both of them facing this direction, and the shaft just kind of slid that way. So these are retainer rings that stay on here, and they keep it, you know, keep from going that way. The other one's the other direction, keeps from pulling in, and it keeps it centered where it's supposed to be. So, all right, so I got this assembly kind of done. Kind of show you what's set up here. So, obviously, got the stud welded in. Put a nut and a washer down here. This gives me the ability to raise and lower, and then obviously the top one in here to tighten it all down. And then I've got a little bit of slack, not too much, but I've got a little bit. It's actually what I'm gonna probably do is I'm gonna probably lock this thing down, kind of in the middle where it's at, and then take this over, square this up with back where it was, and then I'm gonna go ahead and tack this down. And then that should finish that up. All right, so as you can see, I've got this thing temporarily mounted. Trying to make sure I get everything lined up. I've got the face lined up here, and I've already got enough tension on it by adjusting those bolts we talked about down here to raise this up. I'm gonna have to, once I'm done with the motor and all this stuff, then I'll tack this in. I'm gonna tack it on, and then I'm actually gonna, once I get the tensioner on here, get it all tacked in, then we're going to turn it on and test it out and see how it works. One thing I have to be careful of now that I realized once I started is I made this assembly. It's being kind of hard to see. Let me get over here. Okay, so I made this assembly that is going to put tension on this thing, right? At least it's supposed to. It's going to work great. The problem is, as you can tell, is it falls outside of that. And I designed it so that the motor would go up into there and I wouldn't lose any cutting height. By putting this farther over like this, which is probably the most optimum place for it to be, it looks like it's going to make contact with it. So I have to figure out how I'm going to do that. Either that or I have to slide it all the way in to where it clears it. And now when it pushes down, it's really, really close to the other one. And I'm not too crazy about that. Yeah, I'm not sure that's going to work very well. I really want the tension to be closer to this pulley here. So that's what we're going to work on now to figure out how to get this assembly, or at least the part that I got built, mounted to where it best puts tension on the belt, but at the same time, I don't lose any cutting height. So. All right, so that was the first run of the drive system. As you can tell, this thing's hopping around a pretty good bit. It's probably a couple of things. This thing's pretty worn. This was off the old lawnmower I had, and yeah, I don't know if it's perfectly round or what. The other option is that this spring may be too long and it's giving too much, and I don't have enough tension on it. So you can see I've got the bolt welded in down here. What I may do is put another bolt in there, put a couple of them in there, going all the way down, and that way I can test different tensions on this. What needs to be finished now still is the actual assembly that's going to allow me to raise this. So I've got a rod that goes from here up to this, and I'm going to linkage this side from here over to the other side where I'm going to be running everything from over there, and that will allow me to disengage the belt, loosen this up, and then if I want to start cutting, just loosen or drop it down, and then the spring will take over. So I have to be able to override this spring, so it's kind of a balancing act with tension. I'm not very happy with how much this thing hopped around. Not sure if I'm going to need, if I need to adjust this pulley, idle pulley here. I may take this and move it farther over and try that and see what that does. I got everything, pulley and everything running again. Big change of plans. So I initially planned on trying to use the idle pulley to put tension on it, and then when it's off, have it to where it'll free spin. It became very apparent very, very quickly that even if I take the tensioner off, that this little bend right here on that 3-inch, it's still too much, and it causes it to turn. Now, of course, there's no tension on it there right now because there's no belt, but still, it's causing the whole thing to turn quite readily. So, change of plans for now. I'm going to go ahead and permanently, that was already welded on. I'm going to go ahead and permanently weld this in. I'm going to go ahead and tension this up a little bit more and then put this on here. And then I'm going to go ahead and run it for now to where when the motor's on, it turns. Later on, I'm going to go ahead and get a 3-inch clutch here. I think the one I found, it's got a 1200 RPM stall or stall, whatever they call it, on there. I think that'll be more than enough. So that's going to be the plan for now. We're just going to go ahead and finish this part up. And then after that, get the blades, get those mounted on, and then I can go ahead and work on building the blade guides. And then from there, it's just finish welding, paint it, and we're done.